And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen from the interwebs. Welcome to the James Literary live stream. My name is James Murua, so James Murua Literary live stream. We're gonna be for the next hour chatting with the one and only Kalaf Epalanga and Jessemusse Cacinda. Is it Cacinda or Cacinda? Cacinda. How do you pronounce your last name?
Cacinda.
Huh? Cacinda.
Cacinda. Yes.
Yeah, Cacinda. So we're going to be chatting with Kalaf Epalanga and Jessemusse Cacinda. Kalaf is streaming in from Berlin. Am I right?
Yes.
Jessemusse is streaming in from Maputo, and I'm in Nairobi. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our broadcast. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask the two of them to tell us a little bit about themselves. And I'll start with the person closest to me, Jessemusse. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do in the publishing industry that is interesting to us?
Okay, yeah, my name is Jessemusse Cacinda. I'm based in Maputo, Mozambique. I'm a philosopher and also a publisher. In the literary industry, I work basically as a publisher. I run a publishing house called Etale Publishing. It's a publishing house focused on African narratives promotion. We are doing translations from English, French to Portuguese, and we are translating. We are also publishing new Mozambican voices.
Thank you, Jessemusse. Kalaf, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Kalaf Epalanga from Angola, born and raised, currently living in Berlin. I'm a father of two and a musician as well. I publish novels and essays. I also I'm a chronicle writer. I don't know if you really say that in English, but I publish a column regularly in various newspapers. My latest house or home is 451 literary magazine in Brazil. And yeah, and here today for literary conversation.
Thank you. Obrigado. So I'll start with Kalaf. Actually, where is it called lusophone? That's something I've never understood. What is lusophone? The word? What's that about?
Because of the colonizers.
Yeah. So what does that luso word mean?
Yeah, we were colonized by the Portuguese, and the Portuguese people is called the Luso, the Lusophone population that occupy the southern east part of Europe, Peninsula Iberica. I don't really know that much deep because as you can feel or believe, I have a conflict relationship with this word Lusophone. It's a practical word. Don't get me wrong. It's useful, but at the same time perpetuates the idea that we don't have ownership of our own culture, and also even the adaptation we did to the Portuguese language. For example, comparing to Brazil, the Brazilians call their Portuguese Brazilian, but we don't call our Portuguese Angolan or Mozambican for that matter. So all those things I somehow package into the idea of Lusophone languages, Lusophone expressions. But I believe it's deeper than that. It's larger than that.
Wow, thank you. Jessemusse, you're Mozambican, and I just have to tell you, it's only in the last year or two that I've started hearing a bit about writing from Mozambique, and you only see that in translation. So for those of us who don't speak Portuguese or that language, Would you like to tell us a little bit about the Mozambican scene? How does it look like? What are the kind of writers coming out? What are kind of events? What's the scene like?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mozambique's literature is vast. It has several moments, and there are a lot of studies about that. But Mozambique literature is divided in different periods according to different scholars or people who are passionate about writing or studying or discussing issues related to Mozambican literature. But when we speak about Mozambican literature, there are famous writers who probably you know because they are translated, authors such as Miyakoto, Ngulani Bakakosa. Ngulani Bakakosa has one book translated into English, Walalape. Suleiman Kassamu has one book translated into French. Miyakoto, a lot of books are also translated. So when we speak about Mozambique literature, there are few names that come up because are not translated, but there are a lot of Mozambican writers. Most of them are being very famous, even here in Mozambique and in Brazil as well. As you know, here in Mozambique or in Portuguese-speaking African countries, if you want to be recognized in your writing work, your work has to be recognized in Portugal. That's what basically happened. We don't have books coming from Angola to Mozambique or from Mozambique to Angola, but we have books leaving Mozambique to Portugal and Portugal to Brazil, or leaving Mozambique to Angola, not to Portugal and Portugal to Angola. That's why you don't hear more about Mozambique's literature, but there are a lot of writers in different moments, and in the last 10 years, many good authors have entered in the market, and they are writing various styles, different genres, and different topics. Their name is in poetry. Mozambique is also. It has been said that Mozambique is a country of poets. That's why we have a lot of poets such as Alvaro Taruma. I'm speaking about the new generation of writers, specifically the generations that entered in the market in the last 10 years. Alvaro Taruma, Japona Rejuane, Nelson Lineo, Mel Matini. I think you know Mel Matini, Virginia Farran. Yeah, we there is a lot of names, and probably most of them will ask me why I didn't mention their names in these live streams. But there are a
No,
lot of
I'm so happy to hear. Actually, there's a group of people. It's not just Maya Koto and then everybody else. So at least there's a group of people coming out. Maybe
yeah,
we
yeah,
get you in here, Kalaf, because you're born and raised in Angola. Would you mind telling us a little bit about Angola? You don't have to give us such a huge overview, but just to tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about that scene, because I know you do know something about it.
yeah. Yes, I think our case is pretty similar to Mozambique. We have the let's say the pre-independence period. There were more, let's say, middle class people that could have access to education and to to the literary sphere. And that group is also from that group that we had the first nationalists, for example, people that were claiming the national languages, for example, people that were also pairing us with the other movements coming from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, all these independent and African nationalists. Most of them, and the majority of them, were writers, or either poets, or essayists, or philosophers, professors, scholars. So that's basically the first wave of Angolan literature. After the independence, we had a different wave where the most famous, probably we could say, Pepetela, Agualusa, Onjaki, even though Onjaki, I would even put him on the third wave of Angolan literature. But for example, from the first wave, like I would need to go to my notes. But for example, like the generation of Agostinho Neto, the generation of Luandino Vieira, the generation of Santos Lima, for example, like, and that's kind of like the second group. The first group, Onofre, and a lot of even like Portuguese born in Angola, that consider themselves Angolans, but of course could be debatable, but those are more or less the main differences. We had the first group like from the 40s to 50s, and then in the 60s came the generation of the nationalists, basically the ones that belong to the students of the empire, which is a group of politicians that we had. My memory is terrible, but Cabral, Almica Cabral, coming from that group, for example, that studied along with Lucio Lara and Agostinho Neto. We had also the founders of Frelimo. Maybe Jessemusse could help me out. Who were the ones that were studying at that school in Lisbon that basically nurture the Angolan and Mozambican and Cabo Verdean and Guinea-Bissau nationalists, and most of them published. They were poets, they were novelists, and that's basically the literature that birthed the literature that came after the independence, with the likes of Pepetela, Agualusa, Onjaki, and even myself.
I noticed Portugal is quite central to the way that the writing from that part of from your part of the world is. Jessemusse, what kind of stories? What are the kind of stories that are being written in Mozambique? What are the themes? Do we have like crime? Do we have what kind of genres are people writing in?
Well, the kinds what people write depends on the period they are writing. Kalaf said about the political literature written by our I don't know if I can call freedom fighters, but okay, Frelimo founders. Okay, I think I can call freedom fighters. The political literature written by our freedom fighters. It was basically appealing for the land, fight for the land, fight for independence, liberty, freedom, things like that. And there is a kind of poetry here in Mozambique called the Poesia de Combate. Poesia de Combate, okay, I don't know how to translate it. Kalaf.
Yeah, it's like a revolutionary poetry, like
revolutionary poetry. Thank you. Yeah, revolutionary poetry, and there are debates coming up that this kind of poetry is not literature. Is not a real literature. It was only activism using literature. It happened specific during the freedom the freedom war, the war for freedom. After the independence come up, there was a new literature, or new literature was born, specifically focused on our national civil war, as you know, authors such as Miyakoto, um, Suleiman Kassamu works on the war, but at that time or after the independence time, there was a wave of people in the south of Mozambique moving to South Africa, trying to find work in the mining. And there are also stories about this process of going and backing from Mozambique to South Africa. So actually, I said in the last 10 years, there are a lot of names coming up in the literary scene here in Mozambique, and the number of authors is a huge number of authors. They are trying to write different kind of things. They are a kind of literature that we call existentialism, or writing about life, death, writing about dreams, writing about identity, both kind of identity. They are writers who try to write in search for a lost identity, and there are writers who accept the acceptance that the identity or their own identity. There are
No.
authors that try to back or to find the lost identity, and other ones who accept this. There are also political activism, writers writing about social conflicts, and you know, Mozambique story is a story of war. We have a lot of war, fighting against independence, civil war, and now we are struggling with different kinds of war, terrorism, you know, and that kinds of things come up in the literature. The same. That's why it's normal find stories writing about life and writing about death, because every day there are people dying due to conflicts. And so I think there is different topics that actually Mozambique's literature covers, and we are trying to to speak about that and write about that.
Thank you. That's existentialism. I mean, you're going to the whole thing. Kalaf, my question to you right now. I knew you you did the African Book Festival, and
Yes.
initially the focus was Lusophone speaking African writing.
Yes. I
First of
tried.
all, how was the experience? How was the experience there?
It was tragic because COVID, in a way, got the best of us, and we couldn't have the majority of the writers that we planned to have. I felt like there is a gap within the African literature space to have a more of a, let's say, diverse, or to reflect the continent in itself. We only, of course, English speaking countries have a more prominent because of also, again, colonialism. We know that the British Empire is quite a strong empire, so language plays a huge role on that. And so my idea was to highlight writers that um, have a voice and have a set of stories that somehow overlooked on the course of the various festivals around the continent, and also within Europe and South America, and of course US. We have, of course, our, let's say, champions. They are very well known. They are celebrated. They are part of the literary universe. But at the same time, the small publisher houses, the writers that somehow have just one or two books published, those are the ones that are overlooked. They don't have a space. They don't interact within this space. So my idea was to trying to give them a stage, and but again, COVID was not the best time. But I hope also the conversation is set. I hope the next curators, the organizer for the festival, will consider when they make the list of writers that include the Lusophone or the Portuguese-speaking writers, which is the way I feel like we should be addressed as well.
A quick follow-up to that. You say that the language is taking the people out of the discussion because English and Portuguese. Is that the only reason? When you're doing your
there are many reasons. Language is definitely plays a huge role, but also economics. For example, if we look how the industry is distributed, who get the prizes, for example, like we're talking about like the literary awards, for example. Most of the awards demand the books to be in English. They don't necessarily accept translated work on those literary spaces. So I don't want to call anybody, but we know which awards we are talking, especially the ones that champion African literature. They're not so inclusive. And I believe this goes beyond language, of course, but definitely economics, the political language, and also regions. Yeah, like if we're talking, for example, people that have a writer from Mozambique to ask for a visa to go to UK, it's a nightmare. Yeah, like so all those geopolitical things affect also the Portuguese-speaking industry, and not only within the continent, but also within the diaspora. Sometimes we are somehow when I bring, for example, the importance of including Afro-Brazilians into the conversation, we overlook, but Brazil is the largest Black population outside of the continent after Nigeria. We're talking about millions and millions of people, and we don't know their stories. And we know when we try to engage with their stories, we usually only get what the media give us, like the favela, the drugs, and all that. So all those images of what Black people are or is are dictated by others. It's not dictated by us. It's not us going there and figuring out and get to know each other and also engage with the literature that we produce, because all those stories are African stories. I don't distinguish. I don't differentiate between what is being published by Afro-Americans or Afro-Brazilians or Afro-Germans, for that matter, or anybody in the continent as well. So all those things play a huge role, and this, I think, is up to us, to change this dynamic, because this is harming us, because there's so many stories and so many different ways to engage with the humankind, like human behavior. I think that's the role of literature, and not including like millions and millions of people. Like Portuguese is the sixth or the fifth language, the largest speaking language in the world, and overlooking the sensibilities of this group of people is shameful, in my humble opinion.
And
I think, Jessemusse, you said you told me the other day that Portuguese is the biggest language in the Southern Hemisphere. Am I correct?
Yes, in the global south. Because of Brazil, Portuguese is the most spoken language in the global south.
I would like to talk more about Brazil, but before we get there, what are those? Because he's been talking about the challenges of across, the geopolitical challenges. Or what about you, Jessemusse? What are some of the opportunities for those of us who maybe there's a publisher who's watching this live broadcast now and or in future, and they want to watch, they want to maybe consider going into Mozambican space. What are some of the opportunities there?
So there are, I think, practical opportunities and opportunities what we dream. Practical opportunity is to engage more what they call sort cooperation. For instance, take advantage the fact that Brazil speaks Portuguese, and Brazil is a huge country with a great population. We need to strengthen our our collaboration between Portuguese-speaking African countries and Brazil to take advantage of the fact that Brazil is a great market for us. I think that is a practical opportunity because we don't need translations, and I think so it's easier people from Brazil to understand us and us to understand Brazilian. That's the first opportunity, and that's practical opportunity. So the second opportunity is to avoid all all situations that Kalaf mentioned. For instance, creating opportunity for Portuguese speaking authors to be in the book fairs, to be translated, to come in the prizes, special those kind of prizes that are most popular in African literature hemisphere. So that's the second opportunity, but I think that's the dream, you know. That's why I say there is a practical opportunity, and the second one, it's a dreamable opportunity for literature or African literature written in Portuguese. We don't like to use more the word Lusophone because Lusophone is the name of Portugal.
Okay, so let's go back to this Brazil thing. So one of the things that's really interesting for me, Kalaf, is you've mentioned Jessemusse has just mentioned it. You've mentioned it. The biggest market for anybody speaking in Portuguese, writing in Portuguese, is Brazil. But Portugal is where what is so important for you to break through. Could you talk us through that? Because I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, again, it's almost impossible to talk about literature and not bringing politics into this. It's about market. Yeah. So when I think again the Portuguese learned their lesson with Brazil, they developed the country in ways that almost mirrors an European society. In Africa, the main motivation was exploitation. Yeah, you take the goods, send to Europe, and that was it. They didn't develop schools. They didn't, or enough schools. They didn't really try to alphabetize. I don't know if you use this word in English, but of course, give access to knowledge, to language, and so on and so forth. And also another aspect of that, which is really dramatic, but that was also one of the, at least it's different, it's slightly different than Mozambique, but in Angola, for instance, we don't have really, let's say, the national language are not championed. Yeah, like the Portuguese became an official language because right after the independence, when this could be corrected somehow, the country went into a vile and vicious civil war. One of the let's say tricks that the forefathers, the nationalists adopted was to have one common language that somehow diluted the tribal conflicts that could come up from this civil war. But this, of course, has consequences, and one of the consequences is making us dependent on the, let's say, the gatekeepers of that language. First, we are dependent on the market, and then we also dependent on the knowledge. Because if you want to advance on your studies, you will end up on a Portuguese school. And then if you end up on a Portuguese school, which more or less was my case, once you are in Europe and then you start engaging with the local market, and suddenly your books start being picked up, only really like let's say a devoted and really you know, nationalist, so to speak, would go back to the country and develop the country. For example, something that Onjaki is doing, going back and open a publish house, open a bookshop, because there is no those infrastructures are not there in the country. So that's why we are so dependent on the Portuguese market. In a way, it's very similar to the Francophone world, that most of the Francophone writers need France in order to expand with the field. And that's more or less, I would say, one of the issues that would create this dependency of Portugal. But, for example, when it comes to Brazil, another tragedy in our relationship with our global South brothers and sisters is that there is such a dependency, and even like within the continent, is easier. It no longer the case, yeah. But I remember while growing up in Angola, it was easier to catch a flight, cheaper to catch a flight, go to Portugal, and then go to Mozambique, then catch a flight direct to Mozambique, or catch a flight in Luanda direct to
Wow.
Nairobi. So all those things pay a huge role, like so. Then suddenly it's easier for us even to meet, like to engage with one another. It's easier to engage on a Western world than within the continent, because the prices are absurd. For example, for one writer to visit a literary festival in Mozambique, a literary festival in Nigeria, it's a nightmare in terms of economics. It's cheaper to go to Frankfurt Book Fair than to go to Ake, for instance.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
that basically says everything. And then, of course, that was the thing about Brazil. Like Brazil's didn't really, unless it was for political issues, they didn't really cross. Culture didn't cross. We had television, because that's a massive culture product coming out from Brazil, but literary products produced by Afro-Brazilians didn't cross, because we believe we bought into this lie that our products are not commercial viable. Yeah, like which is a lie, but we bought into this because we didn't have anyone else telling otherwise. Like, I don't want to hype you, James, but the fact that we can count in our hands the number of literary blogs or literary magazines to this day, even in the English speaking world, when it comes to markets that I would say, I would call them undevelopment, or like on the verge of developing, is a desert. Yeah. So all those little things make a difference. For instance, like if I want to know what's going on in the literary space in Mozambique, I would find that information quicker in your website, or in Brittle Paper, or in any other literary magazine from within the English-speaking world, than find the literary magazines within our sphere, yeah, within our language group. And all those things are only changing now, like, and takes time. And again, we can sit here highlighting, pointing the reasons why that happened, but ultimately, I felt like we were asleep. We were sleeping, and suddenly thank God, because maybe, the good thing about globalization is that forces us all to engage with one another because we all dependent in one another. But also the fact that the oil is going down is also an opportunity for other products. Like only now our governments are talking about diversifying the economy. And when you talk about diversifying the economy, then maybe there's an opportunity for culture product, our movies, our television program, our music, and so on and so forth. But this is recent, because until 10 years ago, oil-dominated countries didn't care about diversifying the economy. Even branding, which is culture, the most important tool about a country is, the most important tool about countries' branding is culture. Only now
It's
our governments are waking up to this idea.
I love that, man, because I've actually realized that apart from literatas revistas, I don't really know anything that's done in Portuguese online that I can follow. I want to ask you, Jessemusse, because you started a publishing house from scratch in Mozambique a few years ago, and I wanted to know what are some of the things that you went through. I know you started as a film festival, then you became a publishing house. In brief, because I don't want us to talk too long, do you tell us about the challenges and opportunities you went through as a publisher getting into the Portuguese market?
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
sorry, into the Mozambican market. You see, the Portuguese are already colonizing me.
Okay, yeah, there are a lot of challenges, not only to get into the Portuguese market or to Brazilian market, but there are also challenge to to build anything that we can call a book industry in the future or a literary industry. As I said before, we don't have an industry, we have a system. And these challenges are related to poor investment in literature. For instance, in Mozambique, in the last 3-4 years, there is no single public investment or there is no single public initiative to support literature. You know, the companies, corporate, and social responsibility plans do not include funding for literature. Organizations still not look at storytelling or at literature as tools to promote social changes, and we are working into this environment. Another challenge is related to poor literacy. For instance, in Mozambique, students only start learning how to read or only start reading at grade 5 in the primary school. The education system points the grade 2 has the grade where it's supposed to children read, but it don't happen. It happens only in grade 5, grade 6, and the reading it's not a normal thing in our environment. Even people at university, they don't read books, and we are trying to work on this. Or it's difficult to create a literary market in a space with challenge like those one who are which one I mentioned. So there is other challenges related to our position as Mozambique. Mozambique is the only Portuguese speaking country in its neighboring, and it constitutes a barrier to access or to communicate and sharing cultural goods and cultural products with our neighbors, such as South Africa, South Africa is a great market for cultural products, but we don't access this market. And when we created our publishing house, the idea was to bring more African stories into our market and to create conditions to build a market here in Mozambique. That's why we are not only working alone as a publishing house. We also work with other small publishing house, and we have created a network to distribute books together as a group of small publishing house. We are doing campaigns. We are doing literary events. We are doing YouTube live shows. We are doing podcasts. We are doing TV and radio shows. All of those activities are to create conditions to have a market in the future, because it's not easier to have a market today. Yeah.
I think you muted, James.
James, yeah, you are muted.
Thank you for that. So you're looking to the future. Kalaf, I know that it was announced very recently that your book Whites Can Dance Too is being translated into English and is coming very soon.
Yeah, well, not so soon, but it's coming.
2023. That's soon enough. Please tell us a bit about the process of getting your books into this space, an English space, and how easy or difficult it is.
Well, it's for Portuguese speaking writer, it's difficult, it's hard, and I'm privileged. Yeah? I'm lucky to navigate within a space that allows me to meet publishers, to meet agents, and so on, and that's the privilege of being based in Europe. Yeah, for example, one lesson that I learned from a Brazilian writer, that we share at some point the same agent, that used to be the same agent as Agualusa and Jackie and Mia as well. But this Brazilian writer say, look, agents are fantastic. We all need them and we all love them, but do not be complacent. Hit the road. Go out, meet people, engage with the industry, because you are your best advocate and your best promoter. And I took that lesson, and I decided to travel to the best festivals around the world and meet people. I went to Paraty, one of the main and the most important festivals in South America, which is in a city, I think 2-3 hours from Rio. And also I went to Frankfurt Book Fair. This is where I met my Spanish publisher in a party, mingling and introducing myself and saying, look, I'm Angolan, I'm a writer, here's my story, and suddenly he picked up the book. And I went to African Rights in the UK, just introducing myself, meeting. There I met a Guinea-Bissau translator, Jovanka Perdigão, and she introduced me to my current agent now, and and things, of course, start to happen when you are on the right places and people that can champion your work. And believe me, and that was one of the lessons that I learned while traveling. I met one incredible publisher. Again, I don't want to put her in the spotlight, but she said, look, don't even bother to send me your synopsis. Do you have an agent? Because if you don't have an agent, I don't even want to talk to you. So all those things that we, as a writers coming from really small markets or small countries, we don't know. And yes, you need to hit the road. There's no shortcuts to this. You need to meet people. Yeah. And for example, even like the online events, in a way, democratize a little bit this industry, because otherwise this conversation, with James, Jessemusse, and myself, this won't happen. This, what is happening now is absolutely revolutionary, and that's one of the things that I really I don't take for granted. You need to grind, you need to work, and and if people don't know you, especially now that artists or writers need to become somehow also social media savvy and personalities and things like that, is absolutely necessary to travel. But and then comes the real issue of trying to bring stories to different markets. But I don't have other words by saying I'm privileged, and I take full advantage of the situation I'm in.
I'm really happy to hear that. But you've spoken about translating from Portuguese to English and Spanish. Jessemusse, I know you've actually been translating books from English to Portuguese. I know you've done. I believe you've done translations of Shoinka and Gugi. Could you tell us a little bit about that process and why you did it?
Okay. I think I have explained why we are doing it. We are doing it because in our market we don't have access to other kind of African literature. Only we access Mozambique's literature and Portuguese literature. Recently, we are receiving Brazilian literature, but I think we do not access well as is expected Angola's literature or Guinea-Bissau or Cabo Verde's literature.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. And we don't access South Africa and Zimbabwe's literature as well, but South Africa is here, Zimbabwe is here, That's why we try we started doing translations, translating books that not exist or are not available in Portuguese. We translated books in French and in English to Portuguese. How the process is, we started working first with Portuguese translators because we at the moment we started doing it, they were no Mozambicans translators or people in Mozambique doing literary translations. So curiously, in 5 years, that's the time we are in the market, we now know a lot of Mozambicans literary translators, not only based here in Mozambique, but also based in diaspora. And we are working with all of them. And this process was facilitated by technology as well, because we went on the internet in search for translators, we find the curriculum, a portfolio, and then we did choose the translators to work with, and they have doing it. So I think the process is going well. Curiously, all African publishers we have contacted to have the rights to translate books into Portuguese, all of them were excited to do that. And there are a lot of publishers, African publishers, contacting us every month just to translate. But okay, our market it's not our market. Our market is not. It's not quite good to do lots of translations, but all of African publishers when we contacted them to translate their work, they receive it as well, or we are going well received by the publishers. But also we are becoming well received by Mozambique's readers. People here in Mozambique, when want to read African literature, they go to our bookstore and they know that, okay, Etale Publishing is a publishing house focused on African literature, and its bookstore is where we can find African literature. Because here in Mozambique, what happens is when you go to great bookshops, you will not find African books in the top of how I can say prateleira. Okay.
Yeah, the shelves.
Yeah, you'll not find African books in the top of shelves. You will find African books. Will be difficult to find African books. You will
Wow.
find, you'll find European books, translated European or American books. Um you will also find Portuguese, but not enough, especially European and American books translated from English to Portuguese. All of the best-selling authors in USA, you will find its books here in Maputo. Tomorrow you can go to a bookshop and you'll buy a book selling authors by an American author. It's normal. But it's difficult to find African books, and our bookstores do not put African authors on the top of the shelves. So when we opened our own bookstores, we started putting African authors on the top of the shelves. And our bookstores only, or not only, but sells basically African authors. We are selling 90% of African authors and only 10% of authors from outside of the continent.
Wow. I mean, I have to just laud you because I noticed this is a thing across the continent where you have a bookshop with Africans in an Africana section or hard to access. You talked about something, Kalaf, earlier when you were talking about translation, about the role of technology and how it's changing the game. And we're about to start wrapping up. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you think? How do you think technology is going to change the game, or has it already? How much it's changed the game already?
It's changing, absolutely, and thank you for highlighting this topic, because what Jessemusse is saying here is so important. For example, in Angola, we also lack access to Soinkas and Achebe translations in Portuguese, and I cannot wait, especially now that we all have a mobile phone, a smartphone in our hands. I cannot wait that we lose this. I would call it prejudice, because there's nothing else to say. I believe like we resist to the digital imprints. Like we cannot. I don't know why, but someone put in our hands, in our heads, the idea that we need the physical copy and the book itself. But as a writer, maybe Jessemusse can say from the perspective of a publisher, but as a writer, I don't care. I just want the stories to reach the reader. And if the reader is reading on a mobile phone, on a Kindle, on an iPad, doesn't matter. It's important for the stories to be distributed, and also more important for the right holders to give license on affordable prices, on discount, to say more specifically, to publish houses in the continent, and also allow them to sell within the digital shops, from the Amazons and the iTunes and everything. I believe that's the future of African literature. We need to digitalize. We need to go digital.
Okay, so it's looking bright. I know that Jessemusse, you have an app. You talked about this your bookshop. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, as Kalaf said, I think tech is changing the game, and we are opening our app. It was already done, but now we are facing a lot of challenges because here in Mozambique, our financial system, it's not prepared to do trade in digital space.
Yeah.
So this kind of business do not depend on us, but depend on the system we are in. But we are trying to launch the app in this year, and we are working with some developers who are experienced in working with technology payment systems from Kenya. And now I think we are about to launch it, and the guy who was supporting us from Kenya and people from Kenya doing everything to facilitate us, because our financial system, it's not prepared to do business on the digital space. So we are not luck, but we have built an app and we have all books there, and we can't wait to have this app online.
Okay, I'll be really excited because I'm sure Kalaf you'd be interested in. Do you guys have any questions for each other? By the way, I forgot to ask. Is there any question you'd like to know from either of you?
I'm delighted to meet Jessemusse. Next time I'm in Mozambique, I travel quite often to Mozambique. It's one of my favorite places to visit. So definitely, I already have your email, and next time I'm in Mozambique, I will pass by for a coffee.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy also to know you, and you are very famous here in Mozambique. My friends from here, from Nampula. I was born in Nampula in the north. My friends from Nampula talk about Kalaf and Buraka Sound. You know.
You're very kind. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here with you in this live stream. And James as well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
James,
you, guys. I mean,
you are a rock star.
It's a good way to end. It's a good way to end our live stream. Thank you so much, gentlemen and gentlemen, for joining us. And for those of you who are watching the live stream live right now, or who are watching us in the future, thank you for joining us. And I want you to have a nice time and have a great time. Thank you to my partners. Oh, I see there's a quick comment here. Chimeka Garek has just checked in. He is telling us fascinating conversation. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Thank you, Chimeka, and others who logged in. Thank you.
Thank you.
A great writer right there.
Yes, that is a writer.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say thank you to the Frankfurter Bookmaster, who are my partners in this project, and the German Federal Foreign Office who has funded this project. And I'll wish everybody who's logged in, say hello and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Goodbye.